Hello my dear students, welcome today again to your online class. Today we will be discussing the last topic of the chapter Landforms of the Earth. In this topic we will be discussing plains and the various types of plains that are formed on the Earth's surface. So let's first define or let us try and understand what is plains. Plains are flat extensive land masses. They are flat extensive land masses whose height does not exceed above 150 meters from the mean sea level. So to those lands we call it the plains. And these plains are of various types, but in major groups we divide the plains as structural plains and depositional plains. So let us try to understand what is structural plains. Structural plains are the plains formed by emergence of sea bottoms, and they are wide towards sea due to depositions made by sea waves. So when we say this, what it means is we see that under the water also there are forms of land masses, or you say that there are land masses even underneath the water. Not very deep inside the water, but the shallow water. The land masses, due to some tectonic movements, happens to rise up and come out of the water. It happens to come out of the water. And that piece of land which comes out of the water or emerges out of the sea bottom are usually flat because they are mostly made up of depositional matter. Hence, this emerged landmass comes to be known as structural plains. For example, the Russian platform is considered to be a structural plain. The other form of plain is depositional plains, and it can be defined as the plains formed by depositions of sediments made or brought by the rivers, glaciers or winds. So in this case, what we see is these agents of erosion like river, glacier and wind, they erode in the higher areas or in mountainous areas, and these eroded material, they carry down the slope of the hills or mountainous areas, and then these sediments that they carry, when they enter the low-lying regions or when they start coming towards the flatlands, they start depositing, and hence thereafter makes the plains to what is we call the depositional plains. Now there are various types of depositional plains, as we see that there are three agents of erosion: rivers, glacier and wind. Each of these agents of erosion have their own activities or have their own work of depositions to do, forming various types of plains. So let us try and understand each of these plains one by one. Alluvial plains. These plains are mostly formed by the deposits of alluvium made by the rivers. Now this alluvium that we talk about are the finer sediments that are brought by the rivers after it flows down the mountainous areas where erosion takes place in maximum. These sediments that have been brought by the rivers are deposited in the low-lying regions and thereafter forms the alluvial plains. Well, these very deposits brought by the rivers, when are deposited at the base of the mountain, or you can say even foothills, to such deposits we call it Piedmont fan, as the term Piedmont refers to the foothills or the base of the mountain. Hence, it can be defined as deposits made by the rivers at the foothills in fan shaped is known as Piedmont fan. Now, these Piedmont fans or the deposits that are made at the base of the mountains are mostly composed of pebbles and boulders. So hence they are also known as bhavar in India. The next is floodplains, again river deposits. The floodplains are mostly formed with the deposits of finer materials that are carried by the rivers. But usually these plains are formed after the flooding of the river. That we can see during the rainy season. What happens is the volume of the river increases. So with increase in the volume of the river widens itself across the banks and the deposits are made on those banks. and is much visible only after the flood water recedes back to the normal size. That means when the river comes to the normal after the flood, that is only when we see those deposits made on the either side of the banks of the river, and such plains are known as flood plains. Deltaic plain, another form of depositional plains made by the river and is formed at the mouth of the river. When we say mouth of the river, a mouth is a point where the river ends itself and drains into the oceans or seas. So at its last stage of the river, where maximum depositions is made, so in its mouth, the depositions are mostly made in triangular form, and hence it is known as delta, a Greek term which is used for denoting triangular shape. So this delta, as it resembles because of the shape, and hence the name known as deltaic plains. A very evident example that you can give for deltaic plains is the Sundarbans in India at the base of, you'll find it at the bottom of West Bengal and Bangladesh, where they are formed by the joint actions of river Brahmaputra and Ganga. Now, glacial deposits. The term glacial would be denoted to the moving ice, or you can say glacier is moving ice. And these moving ice, they carry along with them sediments when they move, mostly in the continental land masses. So these sediments are deposited elsewhere. That means either on the side of the glaciers, that is on the bank of those glaciated valley, or at the mouth of the glaciated valley. These sediments that are carried by these glaciers are deposited on the base or on the lateral side of the glaciated valley and are only visible after the glacier melts. So with the melting of the glacier, these sediments are deposited in those lateral or on the base of the glacier, and hence results in the formation of glacial plains. So these glacial plains are quite irregular in their structure because the deposits made by the glacials are not of the same size. The example that you can give of is the plains of central North America, where most of these plains are formed. Now next is Aeolian Loess Plain. Now this Aeolian, when we talk about it or when we use the term Aeolian, it refers to the wind action. So Aeolian Loess Plain is an action of the wind, where we see that the wind carries lighter materials on the earth's surface, and they make a huge deposits of sandy materials mostly, forming the finer materials which is known as loess. These fine materials are carried by the winds, and when are obstructed by some highlands, these fine materials are deposited and makes the Loess Plain. For example, the Loess Plain of China is one of a very good example, as it covers a huge and extensive areas of almost 2.5 lakh square kilometers. Now the last one as of depositional plain is lacustrine plain. This is again an action of water, but what we see here usually is that lakes are connected by rivers. Now this lake, when they are connected with rivers, the inflow of river brings lots of sediments and deposit at the bed of the lake. Now, as time passes by, when the lakes dry up, the sediments, they get deposited in the shallow basin of the lake, and that very forms the plains, which is known as the lacustrine plain. You can find such plains around the Great Lakes of North America. So these are the various types of depositional plains that are formed either because of the deposits made by river, glacier or wind. Now let's discuss about the significance of the plains. When we talk about plains and its significance, the first thing that comes to our mind is that this landform is the most dominated with population or human habitation. In fact, you can say that plains are the most populated regions around the globe. There are certain reasons why it is so. It can be summed up in the significance that we would discuss. The first thing is Plains are flat lands where construction becomes very easy of any of the structure that you talk about, infrastructure that you talk about, like laying of the railway tracks, constructions of roads, or skyscrapers that are mostly formed in the plains. So it gives a development to the infrastructure as with easy constructions of it. Hence, it is mostly populated, and this is also very important as it's as being a landform. The next is plains. As we so far discussed, that there are lots of deposits made by river, wind and glacier. So all these deposits adds to the fertility of the soil, and fertility of the soil means it promotes or it facilitates agriculture. And as we understand that more than 60% of world population is engaged in this primary activity of agricultural practice, hence plains becomes a valuable landforms in such activity. The third and last one that we talk about is plains are usually fine weathered conditions we find in the plains. Most of the mountainous regions or some other regions, plateaus, they have kind of harsh conditions with some either dryness or because of temperature conditions. But plains, they have much fine climate than as compared to other regions. And then plains also helps in urbanizations as because of industries as part of infrastructure that can be easily constructed in this region. So this is all about your chapter. Thank you, and you all have a good day.